What's up, guys? Welcome back to the Jenks Island Podcast, the only podcast where you get your takes from a washed-up Division III corner. I'm your host, Chris Jenkins, and as usual, I'm joined by my guest, Ty McGee, good friend of the podcast. Ty, how was your Thanksgiving? I know everyone had a little bit of a break here. You got away from work, the 9 to 5 for a little bit. So how was your little break?
Yeah, it's good to get away from the 9 to 5, be back around the fam, get some snow going and get the food going. Just watching some good football, minus that 4 o'clock game, pretty bad, Cowboys Giants, but otherwise some good football to watch. So yeah, good weekend to be back off.
Yeah, depending on when you ate that day, like a lot of people I know probably napped during that one. So they didn't miss much, at least. That's the good thing with that slate. Did you do like a turkey bowl or anything, or just kind of hang out with family?
Yeah, we did turkey bowl. Your boy got the win, pulled out a clutch win at the end there, rushing touchdown to win the game, coming down to the wire there. So yeah, nice little turkey bowl action going.
That's that football experience coming in. I like to hear it.
Yeah.
Anyways, so we're going into week 14 for picks this week, which is crazy enough to say. I know this NFL season has been flying by, and I feel like we say it every year, but this season it really feels a little bit different for whatever reason. It just feels like it's blowing by extra fast. So with that, we're going to get right into our weekly recapping our leader for our pick'em group. At number 1, we have my cousin's Micro Penix at 134 wins, still in first. Hammer's still in second at 130 and 65. I'm down here tied for fourth at 126 and 69. Ty is going to be down at ninth, I believe, tied for ninth at 123 and 65, something like that. And then just a quick moment of silence for Picking Grapes. 2 weeks in a row, forgot both weeks of his picks. So poor guy fell all the way out of the rankings. Jersey is no longer looking like it's in the running for him. My cousin's Micro Penix is looking like the strong leader unless Hammer makes a miraculous comeback. Anyways, getting right into week 14. We got a solid slate. There's nothing crazy. I feel like there's going to be a lot of games that are pretty easy picks for some people here. But starting off, we got probably the game of the week. We got Thursday Night Football with the Packers taking on the Lions in Detroit. And this is going to be a huge game for the NFC playoff rankings, the NFC, just the NFL landscape as a whole. If the Packers come into Detroit, beat them like they were able to last year, it gives a little bit of different perspective. The Lions are currently viewed as the number 1 team in the league. And the Packers are looking to kind of take over the NFC North. I know the Vikings are still right there too, but they've looked a little bit off. The Lions banged up with injuries, things like that. But I still think they're going to be able to take home this win at home over the Packers in a close one. I'll say that. I'm going to go to the Lions here. Ty, who do you got?
Yeah, I mean, the Packers looked, they looked good last week, right? But I think it's a little bit of an asterisk there, right? They're playing against a team that with Tua, who has never really won a game in those frigid temperatures. So, but nonetheless, right, they were an impressive team. But the Lions, I mean, the story of the season, right? Like they just continue to win week in, week out. No matter what. I mean, we look at them, right? We talked about this, I think, last week. We look at them in a Colts game and they win 24-6, and we're like, okay, wow, like that's not a huge win, right? But that's a sizable win, but that's just not what we expect from the Lions anymore. So that just shows their dominance. They're able to do it, running the football, throwing the football, no matter how many injuries. I mean, they lead the league in number of guys on IR this season. So they just figure out a way to win. It's hard to pick against them. Divisional matchup, so it's going to be a tough one. I think the Packers will definitely play this a little bit closer than a lot of teams have. Probably similar to the way that the Vikings played the Lions. But I just think at the end of the day, the Lions, I mean, that offense and the coaching-wise, they've just found ways to pull things out. So I'm going to go with the Lions here too.
Yeah, and I want to say, like, the Packers defense has been playing solid all year, but it seems like they kind of slowed down a little bit from the first few weeks where they were really, really hot. Seems like offenses are kind of starting to scheme. Obviously, other than the Dolphins in the cold weather, they're not scheming up anything over there. Mike McDaniel's shivering on the sideline, wants to get off the field as fast as possible. So we'll see if the Packers or the Lions take home this NFC North battle. Next, we got another rivalry game between the Jets and the Dolphins in Miami. The Jets, again, they're just free falling at this point. It's a really bad season for them. I feel bad for Jets fans because they did have a lot of hope going into this one. I even thought that they could come in maybe like second in the division. I still thought the Bills were going to win. obviously. But then the Dolphins come out. They're trying to kind of make a comeback into the playoffs, things like that. And then they just get absolutely destroyed, just like emotionally, physically, everything against the Packers last week. And I think this week they could bounce back. I want to hear your thoughts, Ty, before I make my pick. Who do you got in this one?
Yeah, the Jets last week, I mean, if you looked at that first half, I really thought like, hey, maybe this is a team that could run the table, right? They really got Devontae involved in that game. They were playing really well. I know they were taking advantage of a lot of short fields and, just the Seahawks making some of the mistakes in the first half. But that second half was, it just was back to the same old Jets that we've seen all year, right? And losing that lead, the way that they played, it was just very, very sloppy. And Miami, last week again, they can't play in the cold, but we get them back at home, back in the comfort of the Miami Heat, right? So they're in a prime position for Tua in that offense to really get rolling again, like they have been. It just I don't know. The Jets are going to jet, and they've proved that this whole entire year. Even when they show you a slimmer promise, right? They come right back and they screw it all up. Miami, the only time they've struggled with a fully healthy team has been in the cold. So, you got them back home. I think that offense is going to be humming. Get Tyreek and Waddle more and more involved. Jonnu Smith, I mean, he's been a weapon. He's been a weapon. Last week, even in a bad game, in a cold game, I think he had 10 catches, 110 yards. So, he's a real weapon. I know the Jets have pretty good linebacking core, but even if they really stress on him, right, those receivers on the outside, Sauce hasn't as good of a year this year. So, those guys are going to be a problem. In the run game, getting A-Chain involved. So, it's just Miami's back home. They have a really high-power offense, and the Jets are just one of those spiraling teams that, you just can't pick. So I'm going to go Miami.
Yeah, I'm going to go Miami here as well. This is just kind of a game where you want to see as like a Jets fan that they could do anything. Like that you want to see at least be a close game and just not a blow up. Because like you said, last week, the first half, they looked promising for them. Like they looked like they could have won that game. And then it just really fell apart in the second half. So we'll see if the Jets are able to bounce back against a strong offense. And like you said, Jonnu Smith, really an X factor. So I'm going to go the Dolphins here in this one. Next, we got the Falcons taking on the Vikings, another team like the Jets, banking on a seemingly washed up quarterback veteran that's just struggling right now. And the Vikings just still continuously winning games in not miraculous fashions, but like they're winning in games where they really shouldn't be winning. And they're kind of a question mark of the NFC at this point in time. The Falcons, Kirk Cousins has 0 touchdowns and 6 picks over the last, I want to say 2, maybe 3 weeks, which is just not a good look for any quarterback in the NFL. And the Vikings, their offense is slowing down a little bit. Jordan Addison got involved a few weeks ago, and then last week I put a bet on him, and of course he does nothing. But Aaron Jones comes back, bounces back from an early fumble in the game, and catches the game-winning touchdown against the Cardinals, and it looked like they kind of got momentum towards them in that game. I think they're going to bring that into this one and beat the Falcons here that with an offense is just struggling. And maybe Michael Penix makes his debut in this game. He's had a few games where he's gotten some playing time, but I mean, as actually like they're putting him in this game, maybe halfway through as intentions to play him the rest of the year. So we'll see what the Falcons do, but I think the Vikings win this one. Ty, who you got?
Yeah, I see your point about Penix, right? And I think that would be the right move at some point in time. You're 6-6. I think they are right now. Give the young guy a shot, especially with how poor Kirk is playing. I just don't see it happening, though. They paid him so much money. They're at least going to ride him out for the year. And that's really concerning for this game, at least, right? Because 4 picks against a Chargers team, and granted, it was a close game, 17-13, right? Like, I mean, the fact that they were even in that game is insane. I think that says more about the Chargers than it does about the Falcons. But going against another really, really good defense, a defense that I think is even better than that defense. Guys like Cam Bynum and I think Gilmore's out, but some of these guys in the secondary have really proven to be a problem. Maybe not big names, but they've made some plays all throughout the year. Flores has really coached them up, so I think that's going to be a huge problem for the Atlanta offense with the way that Kirk's been playing. On the flip side, right, it's going to be interesting to see how the Vikings manage that run game, because I think they benched Aaron Jones for a bit there in that game. Then they brought him back in. So do they go with more of an Akers, Chandler, Jones kind of split, or do they continue to give Aaron Jones that lead back type of plays? So that'll be interesting to see. But I mean, at the end of the day, the Vikings have just they found a way to win, right? They've continued that magic that they had 2 years ago of winning close games. I think they're 6-1 in one score games thus far this year, and this is very similar to what they were 2 years ago with Kirk Cousins. So, it's just when you have a team like that, right? Like at least in the regular season, you can continue to bet on them to play well and continue to try to pull it out in some of these closer games. I don't think this will be a close game. You never know with Kirk. I mean, he could make it close. It's his homecoming, right? But just the way that he's been playing, it's hard to believe in him. But regardless, I'm going to go with the Vikings here.
Yeah, I just think Kirk Cousins has regressed too much to really take on this Brian Flores-led defense. Next, we got my Saints taking on the Giants in New Jersey, and I'm going to be at this game with Hammer, so it'll be a fun game to go to and enjoy possibly a win here. Who knows, honestly, with both these teams. So I want to hear your thoughts, Ty. Who do you got in this one, and what are your thoughts on this matchup?
I think this should be an easy one for the Saints. I mean, the Giants, I don't know, that Thanksgiving game was just bad, right? Like they just did not play well. Yeah. I think Locke's getting the start again, is what I heard. Yes. So, I don't know. We've seen what he can put out there on the table. The Saints on paper have the better team, right? Even without Taysom, which is a huge, huge loss because that is, a huge focal point of their offense. I just think this offense, at least in this game, could just run through Kamara, give him the ball, 20 plus touches, right? And that's how you win the game. Passing, rushing, right? You bring those guys into the box. The secondary for the Giants is really bad. Maybe we see an MVS, deep ball threat, AJ Brown-esque moment for him. Yeah. But no, in all reality, right, I think this is one of those games where MVS could be a big factor, in the deep ball game for them, and just dink a dunk to Kamara, right? So I think the Saints should easily win this game. I think without a question they're a better football team and they have the better football players than the Giants. It's just hard to trust the Giants right now. And, when you have Alvin Kamara, I mean, you never know with him, right? Any game he can pop for 5 touchdowns, and he's going to at least be consistent for you, but he could really carry you too. So I'm going to go with the Saints here.
Yeah, I'm going to go with the Saints here as well. I'll keep my my little rant a little short here. I think Alvin Kamara, obviously, you have to involve him the whole entire game. Last week, Taysom Hill goes down, and he's been like the do-it-all guy, like you said. He's been a personal punter protector. He's been everywhere on the field. He blocks punts. He goes and returns kicks. He's the running back. He's the fullback. He does everything. So him going down for Clint Kubiak is a really big miss. And I think Clint Kubiak needs to learn how to adjust and run this offense without him. And like you said, Alvin Kamara is the answer. And Kendre Miller coming back from IR, who's a guy that has been injured most of his career, but when he's playing those few snaps a game where he's healthy, like he looks promising. So hopefully he can stay healthy, get him involved in the run game as well, and get this offense going even without Taysom Hill. I'm going to go the Saints here, beating the Giants in New Jersey. Next, we got the Panthers taking on the Eagles, and I'll keep this one a little bit short and sweet. The Bryce Young-led Panthers have looked frisky over the last few weeks. So I'll keep it short and sweet. They've looked solid. They've looked frisky. But in the end moments of the games, they've been choking things away, or they haven't been blanking on the word. They have been efficient. And I think that's really the key for the Panthers here. The Eagles are a very dominant team right now. I believe they're on a 10-game win. They're on a really long win streak, like 9-game win streak, something like that, after starting 2-2. So I think the Eagles come out and just blow out the Panthers here in this one at home at the Link. Ty, who do you got?
Yeah, I mean, short and sweet, just like you said, right? The Panthers have been frisky, and maybe they can make this a close one. But I just, the way that Philly's playing right now, the dominant win that they had, over the Ravens, right? And maybe not dominating the point spread, but it just felt like they were the more dominant team, the consistent team throughout that game. And Saquon's just a problem, right? And the Panthers' run defense is not, top tier. So I think Saquon's.
It's last in the league in rushing yards per game allowed. So
yeah. I mean, that's been a consistent thing with them, right? Week in, week out, especially in the first couple of weeks. We mentioned this with them, right? Not a good run defense. No Derek Brown makes it even worse, right? So and that continues to be where they are. So Saquon, I mean, man, he's just going to get closer and closer to that 2,000 yards playing bad teams like this. So it's going to be the Eagles for me.
Yeah, if Saquon gets to like 150 rushing yards in this game, that 2,000 really becomes very easy for him. this year. So I'm excited to see what he can do. Next, we got the Browns taking on the Steelers. And as a team that just played Jameis Winston and got the full Jameis Winston experience watching your team, the Broncos, beat the Browns, I want to hear your thoughts on this game and this matchup. Who do you got in this one?
Yeah, the Browns team, I mean, under Jameis, they've been frisky, right? And they've shown the ability to be in every single game that he's played in. I think they're 2-3 with him now, right? But, two of those wins against division opponents, one of them being against the Steelers, right? Granted, it was, in Cleveland in a snow game, and George Pickens is crying about it. But, they're frisky, right? And you just really it really just depends on what kind of Jameis Winston you get that day, right? Because if he throws one less interception, I mean, they win that game, right? Yeah. Not even the one at the end of the game, whatever that was. The game was already over at that point in time. If he doesn't throw that pick six to Jaquan McMillan, I mean, that game, like they could win that game, right? So they're just frisky. They got a lot of weapons out there. But the problem here is, right, this game is in Pittsburgh. And I think that's where things get turned a little bit for this, right? Like, they were frisky in Denver, and that's fine. But when we come down to divisional opponents, that home field advantage is huge, especially in Pittsburgh with that terrible towel. Fans are going to be going crazy. And when you look at the way that Pittsburgh played last week, right, defensively allowing a lot of points, but to one of the better offenses in the NFL right now, and forcing two big turnovers, right, on the strip sack, one for the touchdown that pretty much won them the game. But that's not even the big story here, right? I think, Jameis could have a day against them, right? But it's the fact that Russell Wilson, this offense, was able to put up so many yards, so many points, keep up, score 40 points, right? Keep up in a high-scoring game. I mean, that's just something we haven't seen from the Steelers in a long, long time. And I think that's the X factor in this game. So I don't think, I think no matter what Jameis and the Browns are able to do, coming off, some hot weeks where they've beat some top-tier opponents and put up a lot of points, I think that the Steelers at home and with the way that they've been playing, whether it's a close game, whether it's low scoring or high scoring, the Steelers pull it out one way or the other. So I'm going to go with the Steelers here as well.
Yeah, I got to go with the Steelers here as well. Like you said, in the game against Cleveland, the first one where it started to snow towards like halftime, that first quarter and the second quarter, the offense looked like it was starting to hum a little bit, and they got George Pickens involved, things like that. And it really looked pretty good. And then that snow hit and the offense just fell apart. So I think better weather here in this one and a home environment will really allow for the Steelers just to beat up on the Browns. And I will say, Jameis Winston is the definition of a goldfish. Like when you want, like, I believe it was Ted Lasso said, you would got to be a goldfish, man. You just got to forget a bad thing that happens immediately. Just snap right out of it. And in that game against the Broncos, you saw it. He threw 2 pick sixes and he still like was back there every single drive. Just like, okay, I'm going to go lead my team down the field. Like he's always happy, has a smile on his face. And then after the game, he says, I just want the Lord to lead me from pick sixes. And it's just like, this guy is the epitome of just happiness and like a guy that you can root on every single week. So I love to see what he can do this week against the Steelers defense. That being said, I don't think it'll be successful. I think the Steelers defense is going to give him some fits. Next, we got the Raiders taking on the Buccaneers. This one, again, the Raiders, like they're a frisky team. They do things. And they got Brock Bowers, who could be the offensive player or offensive rookie of the year because he's the only offensive rookie who's playing at an all-pro level. That being said, I think there's too many quarterbacks in the league, and Bo Nix and Jaden Daniels already playing to the level they are. I don't think Brock Bowers has a real shot at it. That being said, he's playing at an all-pro level. That's a real weapon for them. And Aiden O'Connell had a solid game against the Chiefs. But I think the Buccaneers team will come into this one after having a close game with the Panthers, bounce back, like solidify on their fundamentals, and I think they'll beat the Raiders here at home. What are your thoughts on this one, Ty?
Yeah, I think the Raiders' last game, right, and the Bucs' last game are just a product of kind of that divisional matchup, right, where all those games always end up being very, very close. I think just the way that Buccaneers are playing right now, especially in the run game, the way they've gotten Bucky more and more and more involved. I mean, he's playing at a top tier level too, right? We're talking about another rookie that, maybe if he had some more carries early on, could be an offensive rookie of the year candidate as well, just with the way that he's been playing, the last several weeks. So I think he's a problem. And I think, coming into this game too, the Bucs are going to continue to try to give Mike Evans as many yards as they can, get him to 1,000. I mean, he is their only receiver, but also it's just kind of like I think Baker has that in the back of his head, right? He knows, hey, let's get that ball to Mike, and he's a problem, right? And the Raiders, up front, they have some problems with, Crosby and some of those guys that they pose a problem to any team, right? But on the back end, I just don't think they're very good. Jack Jones is their best corner, but he's not. He's nothing to write home about. So I think the Buccaneers take this one pretty easily. Offensively, they just played really, really well, and defensively, they forced a couple turnovers last week, and they've really stepped up. Kalijah Kancey's a guy who's really, really stepped up this year. I think he has 8 sacks on the year now. So they're getting some production from guys that you just weren't household names before this year, but continue to play well. So I'm going to go with the Bucs.
Yeah, I'm glad you brought up Kalijah Kancey. I loved him in the draft. Like when the Saints were picking and throughout the mock draft process, like Kalijah Kancey's a guy the Saints got to go get, and he's balled out for the Buccaneers so far. So glad you brought him up as a name. Next, we got the Jaguars taking on the Titans. This game is the shit bowl of this week. I'm not talking about this more than I'm just making a pick. I'm gonna pick the Titans here in this, and I think their offense has been playing better. Trevor Lawrence is out. Enough said. I'm gonna go the Titans. Ty, who do you got?
Yeah, same here, right? Short and sweet. Titans. No Trevor Lawrence makes this game a lot easier of a pick. Titans have been frisky, even though they got waxed last week. They still even kind of made it a little bit friskier in that second half. So I'm gonna go with the Titans here as well.
Yeah, Will Levis, like he hasn't looked great this year, but he's had a few pretty good moments. So they at least can rely on him in this one a little bit to beat the Jags. Next, we got the Seahawks taking on the Cardinals, a rematch from a couple weeks ago. And this is a solid game going into Arizona. The Cardinals, again, one of those frisky teams that Ty and I have been talking about all week. You just have no clue what to expect from them week in, week out. Kyler Murray's been figured out a little bit, and the Seahawks for sure figured him out in their previous matchup. And I think the Seahawks can do it again. I think the Seahawks offense is truly figuring something out with JSN and DK Metcalf, both of them being able to get the ball pretty often in their games. And I think JSN's truly become just that guy that you can trust in any situation on the field. And I think for that reason, I'm going to go the Seahawks here beating the Cardinals, with the Seahawks defense being able to limit Kyler Murray just enough in this one. Who do you got, Ty?
Yeah, I really like JSN, and I think we kind of talked about this with Hammer a bit. Like he's become that go-to guy, for Geno, right? Like you can just rely on him. The problem is that the Seahawks continue to be, as we talked about last week, a team that you just can't trust, right? I mean, that game, there is no reason they should have lost. Like the Jets jetted, no reason they should have won. The Jets jetted, and that is why they won that game, right? The sloppy football. And the Cardinals hung in there against one of the NFC's best, one of the NFL's best. They didn't score touchdowns, but they were continuously putting themselves in scoring position to kick field goals. That game was down to the wire against a team that's 10-2 now, and competing for the top spot in the NFC, right? If they can beat the Lions. So they're a frisky team. I like this game being back in Arizona. I think the first time, close game and they lost. Kyler didn't play well, but it was 12th man in Seattle, tough place to play. I think in Arizona they settled themselves down. They come off of a game where they lost but played very well. Continue that momentum going forward. Take advantage of the Seahawks, looking like a very, very sloppy team last week, because it's not like Arizona looked sloppy, right? Like they had their shit together and they played well. So I think they come in, they continue the momentum that they had last week. And can pull off this win. And I think they get the moment, right? Like, I think this is huge. These two teams are really the ones competing for the NFC West at this point in time, right? The Rams, we'll talk about them in a minute, but another tough matchup. And, they've been losing. The 49ers, they lose a lot of guys, right? They've been losing. So I think it really comes down to these two teams. And I think Jonathan Gannon positions his team in this game to take over that NFC West and really, continue that momentum going forward. So I'm going to go with the Cardinals.
Yeah, and I got to ask you here. The reason they lost the last game was because their coach decided to go for a field goal instead of going for a touchdown. And Greg Olsen, even talking about it in the game, was like, "This is the wrong decision. You should go for a touchdown here, put the game away." I want to hear your thoughts on that one. What would you have done? Would you kick the field goal or gone for a touchdown there?
Yeah, I mean, I think at that point, right, the way that the Cardinals defense was playing, they were playing well enough, and they were kind of, it's not like the Vikings were. This wasn't a touchdown back and forth battle, right? Like.
Mm-hmm.
And I mean, it came down to a guy, who had struggled in the game catching their touchdown, Aaron Jones, right? And there was basically no time left on the clock. It was end of the game drive. They go down and score, right? So I don't know. I mean, I like sometimes, playing that, risky move and going for it, but it's really situational, and game dependent, right? And in that in that moment, I think kicking the field goal was the right choice because Jonathan Gannon, defensive guy, right? He's going to trust his defense when they've shown that they can continuously stop the Vikings. And me, defensive guy, right? I'm thinking about it, right? Like if my defense is playing well, I'm a defensive head coach. Do I take the risk and try to go for it on fourth down? Or do I just kick the field goal and trust my defense, right? And I think at the end of the day, you just have to trust your defense and we've talked about this, right? The Vikings offense is not what they were in the first couple weeks. They're struggling a little bit. They were reeling. Aaron Jones was struggling, which is something we really haven't seen from him. So it's like, you look at the other team, how are they playing? You look at how my defense is playing, and you're like, let's just kick the field goal, take this lead, and really trust them. And sometimes it doesn't work out, but I think at the end of the day, it was the right decision in the moment. Hindsight's 2020, but I think I wouldn't have done anything different.
Yeah, I think the reason I would say go for it is just because, like, as a Saints fan, I've seen my defense just let the team down like endless times as a Saints fan. So it's like PTSD. So I would go for it. But yeah, as a rational defensive coach, like you're probably like, yeah, the defense that's been shut the team down can do it again, and they just didn't, like you said. Anyways, next we got the Bills taking on the Rams in Los Angeles. Last week, the Rams beat the Saints in a game that the Saints kind of handed to them. That the Saints shut them out in the first half, and then second half comes in, and they score three drives going just down the field, very long drives, running the ball, whatever, and they end up with 3 touchdowns out of, I believe, the 4 trips that they go to the red zone. And so it was a rough game for Saints fans, myself included, and the Saints kind of handed it to them. I think the Saints offense did pretty well. In the first quarter, we had the ball for 13 minutes, and you end up with 3 points. It's just like, you can't let that happen. I think for the Bills, the offense will be able to run on the field, run the ball down the Rams' throats, stay on the field the whole game. And I think the Bills can beat this Rams team because they're a solid team, but they're not a Bills level team in the NFL. So I'm going to go the Bills here in this one. What are your thoughts, Ty?
I mean, the Rams, they're a frisky team in the NFC, but there's levels to this, right? Like the Bills are, top notch in the AFC. I think they're the best team in the AFC right now. They're just dominant, right? They beat the guys who are the number 1 seed too. So, I mean, they're just having fun, right? You watch that post-game interview, Sean McDermott, who's a buttoned up, very serious guy. He's telling Josh Allen, let's do snow angels, in the snow. Yeah. Like when you're a coach who's that, serious of a guy, is relaxed and having fun, that's how they have a good environment and a good thing going. And that just breeds success. Anytime that, you're having fun, you're serious, and you could kind of mix those two things, hand in hand. I mean, that's a recipe for success. I think the Bills are on they've continued to be on a hot streak, and I think they're really a buzzsaw. LA, Buffalo, wherever this game would be played, I'd take Buffalo here. And I just, it is hard to pick against them, man, especially the last, 5 or 6 weeks. I mean, they have just been lights out. Josh Allen's the MVP. It's insane. He's catching touchdowns, running touchdowns, throwing touchdowns. I mean, he's just out there having fun and balling out. So I'm going to go with the Bills.
Yeah, the Josh Allen hype is just unreal right now. He's been balling out, making up plays on the move with the Bills offense. So I think this Bills offense handles the Rams defense. Anyways, next we got the Bears taking on the 49ers. The Bears, a frisky team, the offense is starting to find that next level for them. When they get Keenan Allen involved, the offense really starts to be able to move the ball down the field. I think that was kind of their issue the first half against the Lions. They didn't use Keenan at all. And then in the second half, Keenan Allen starts being involved, 2 touchdowns, and the offense suddenly comes to life. So the Bears need to continue that in this one. The 49ers on their side, what are they going to do without CMC? CMC goes down, IR. Again, Jordan Mason, IR as well. So it's really up to Isaac Guerrero and George Kittle, Deebo Samuel, all these guys that need to step up with CMC and Jordan Mason going down, the run game possibly going down as well for the 49ers here in this one. That being said, I'm going to go with the Bears here. I think the Bears defense is going to be playing solid enough to limit this 49ers team. They limited the Lions decent enough in the second half to lead a comeback. And I think the Bears ultimately, they should have probably been able to tie that game, take the lead in those last few seconds. But Caleb Williams and Matt Eberflus just had the biggest collapse of time management of all time. And without that, I think they would have won that game. So I think the Bears come into San Francisco and beat the 49ers at home. What are your thoughts on this one, Ty?
Yeah, the Bears, my biggest concern with them, right, is they played a close game last week, and the head coach blunders, right? They get rid of Eberflus. But my concern is, right, like they showed a spark, offensively with Thomas Brown coming in, right? Now Thomas Brown has to take over head coach duties. And that concerns me a little bit, right? Because first time OC, now he's a first time head coach, right? How is he going to, in the first game, how is he going to balance, the head coach responsibilities of, time stoppages and all of that stuff that comes to head coach, and then calling the plays, right? I don't think it's as easy, as for a guy like Sean Payton, right? Or some of these other coaches that have been doing this for a really long time. So that is a big concern for me, right? Like how is he going to be able to coach up this team and call plays offensively for an offense that has been very up and down throughout the year? So that's a little bit of a concern for me. I also just think on the other side, right, San Fran, down 2 running backs. I think Orlando, he'll be a serviceable enough back, but I think this now gives them the opportunity to get Debo more involved in the run game because he's been very lackluster in the pass game. So you got to spark him somehow, right? Like he's a star player. You don't have a Uke. You got to get him going somehow. I think the run game is the the run game is their avenue to get him really involved. I just knowing Shanahan, right? That is what he does, right? The running backs start to go down. They're like, all right, how can we use Debo in the run game to become more efficient? So, I just think they'll get their stars involved. Hopefully they're a little bit more healthy this week. Maybe get Bosa and some of those guys back. And at home, I think you can always trust this team in San Fran, even if they are a little bit banged up. But like I said, I think my biggest concern is just Chicago, with Thomas Brown being now a first-time head coach and a first-time OC, only in his 3rd week as OC too. It's just a little bit concerning, how's he going to be able to juggle all that? Because it is a lot of responsibility. So you just, you can trust Shanahan that he'll get something going. So I'm going to go with the Niners.
It's the interim bump, Ty. It might just lift the Bears just enough. But like you said, very, very tough spot for the Bears to be in, and their head coach, Thomas Brown, to kind of step up and really get this win for them. It would be a huge win for them. Terrible loss for 49ers if that does happen. Next, we got the Chargers taking on the Chiefs, a big rivalry game here. And I think the Chargers, like, you go into this game, you see this Chiefs team as extremely beatable. They come out and they struggle against the Raiders team that is, by all means, worse than you. Like, they are worse than the Chargers by every single statistic, things like that. And I think the Chargers offense is solid enough to beat this Chiefs defense, and their defense is solid enough to limit this Chiefs offense. I think Patrick Mahomes, while he's been all right this year, he's kind of regressed since the past in regards to the last few seasons. And DeAndre Hopkins and everyone else on this team, I mean, Travis Kelce, where's he been the last couple of weeks? He's kind of disappeared. And this season as a whole, except for a few weeks where he has a touchdown, things like that. This offense has truly regressed this season, and I'm interested to see if they'll be able to bounce back in this one. But I'm going to pick the Chargers taking home the win at Arrowhead Stadium, and the Chargers beat the Chiefs. Who do you got, Ty?
Yeah, I mean, this game is so confusing to me. These got to be like 2 of the worst, best teams that I've ever seen. The Chiefs having 1 loss is remarkable with the way they played against some teams like the Raiders and the Panthers. I mean, I just am shocked that, right, like they have had the refs save them last week, and they barely beat a team that's probably in the contention for the top 3 pick, right? It's just they're confusing. And then on the flip side, I mean, the Chargers, like, how do you 4 interceptions and you win a game 17-13? I mean, one of those touchdowns was the pick 6 that Tariq still had too. So, their defense is playing really well. But on the contrary, I don't believe that their offense is playing well at all. I think no Dobbins is huge. They got nothing going in the run game. Haskins fumbles. Gus, their leading carrier. He didn't really do much. I think he was fine, but they didn't give him many carries. I think he had 6 carries. Vidal had a couple carries, and he didn't really do much either. This is an offense that is just lost, in my opinion. I don't think Herbert's playing poorly. And I think Ladd has looked good, but it's just like 17 points and you get 4 turnovers, right? I mean, that is, they fumbled once, right? So you're a +3. You score 10 points on offense. It's confusing, right? And the Chiefs, they don't do it much better either. So I think, divisional game, it'll probably be close. The first time around, this game was a close game also. And the Chargers weren't as good of a football team as they have been in past weeks when they were then. I think the Chiefs, the big thing here is getting Pacheco back. I think their passing game has been a struggle, right? Noah Gray has been, I think, the bright spot for them here.
Yeah.
But I think Pacheco, week 2 back, he'll get more carries. I think they can rely on him a bit more. And I think he is the true X factor in all of this, because the Chiefs defense, as much as we've talked about them, being good and they've carried them in the past, they're not the Chiefs defense that we've seen in the past. They're not even the Chiefs defense that we saw in that first half of the season, right? The way that they've looked, just look at the past 2 weeks against really, really bad teams. It's pretty pathetic. It's just, this is a coin flip game. I'm going to go with the Chiefs here because I just think they're the better team. And I'm going to go with them because I think Pacheco will be that bell cow back that can kind of lead them to the win here. Otherwise, it's just two good teams, but God, they got to be the best or the worst best teams I've seen.
Yeah. Yeah, and real quick, just want to mention, like, Xavier Worthy went to the Chiefs, and everyone expected him to be this huge X factor for them. He really has not done much at all, and maybe in this game they can get him involved and get them the win that you are picking them to win. So it's just a wild game. You have no clue. I'm not touching this game for bets. Like, I'm just telling you now, I'm not like picking anyone to do anything because I picked Justin Herbert last week for 2 touchdowns passing, and he had 0. Like, it makes no sense. But I'm not touching this game at all. Anyways, next we got Monday Night Football. We got the Bengals taking on the Cowboys, and the Bengals again just losing in just such like defeating fashions for Joe Burrow and this offense. The offense just comes to life, and then the defense just lets them down over and over. And I will say the offense, they weren't blameless in that game last week. They did struggle. They had some turnovers at times, but then they came back and led a good comeback. They just weren't able to come back enough. That being said, this Cowboys defense gives them the opportunity to run the ball down their throat and then get Joe Burrow involved as well. And I think they can truly just open up the whole playbook for Joe Burrow in this offense. And the Cowboys with Cooper Rush, yes, CeeDee Lamb might get more involved in this one a little bit just because the Bengals defense is so terrible. But I don't see their offense being able to overcome this Bengals offense. And I think the Bengals win this one in Dallas at Jerry's World. What are your thoughts on this one, Ty?
Yeah, I definitely see your point about, like the Bengals offensively, some of those blunders and the fumbles, right? But Orlovsky talked a lot about this. I mean, like, how much more perfect can you play against a Steelers team like that, right? Like, that they're going to get to the quarterback, and the fumbles, that's unfortunate. But, I mean, some of them were just fantastic plays by TJ Watt, right? But when your defense on the other side is allowing 40 points, that makes it really, really difficult to win a football game. Now, coming into this game, I don't think the Cowboys have the ability to even put up 20 points against this team. Rico Dowdle has looked pretty good in the past couple weeks. But, Cooper Rush, I just don't think this offense under him presents anyone with a real threat. It really scares anyone. If this was a Dak Prescott game, right, and the reason that this game is Monday Night Football is because they imagine this game being a big one, and, the Simpsons all cast, and they couldn't change all that or whatever. Under Dak, this is a whole different game. But Cooper Rush and this team, they just can't get anything going. And the Bengals have shown the ability to force some turnovers, right? They got the pick last week for Cam Taylor-Britt. So I think, they can play fine enough. And the Bengals, I mean, there is no way in hell the Cowboys are stopping this team. Micah Parsons, he's not TJ Watt, and he doesn't have the cats around him that TJ Watt does have. There's just no way. With the run game, Chase Brown, he has looked really, really good in the absence of Zach Moss. And Zach Moss isn't coming back with that neck injury. So we're going to see Chase Brown for the rest of the season really try to give him that opportunity to win this job, long term. And, I mean, he's doing it, right? And against a Cowboys team, I think he's the big, big X factor. You know what you're getting from T. You know what you're getting from Chase. And even Gesicki, right? Like, those guys are going to play, lights out. Joe's going to throw the ball over the yard. But at the end of the day, Chase Brown makes this team probably not – they're not going to make the playoffs, but they're dangerous, right? In these last couple weeks, whoever they play, they're going to be dangerous because offensively, run game, pass game, they're a dual threat. And I think Chase makes this game, a game that they could put up 40 and win by 20. So I'm going to go with the Bengals here.
Yeah, and the funniest thing about the Bengals team is like you see this team, the record, they have no shot at the playoffs really. Like I know they're mathematically not eliminated, but this offense is going to give up even though they really don't have a shot. They're just going to keep trying. All these guys really care, they're competitive, and they just want to put out they just want to ball out every single week. So I think they'll be able to do that against the Cowboys, like you said. Anyways, teams on bye are the Ravens, your Broncos, Texans, Colts, Patriots, and Commanders. Lots of fantasy players out for a lot of people out there. Ty, I know you're one of those guys. You have Derrick Henry on your team. So Hammer and I are playing Ty and his co-manager as well in our fantasy league, and it's for playoffs. So like we're winning in. I think Ty's in no matter what. So it's a big game. I think we can bring home the dub. Hopefully, not going to jinx it. I'll knock on wood real quick. That's a big game for us. Ty, your Broncos are on bye. What do you guys think? What are you looking for them to do over this bye week?
Yeah, just collect yourself, right? And really think about what we're going to do with the run game moving forward. Because I think we really saw Jaleel McLaughlin kind of pop off, played really, really well. I think the recipe for success moving forward is him and a little bit of Estime in the backfield. We just seen Javonte, minus the Falcons game. I think in the last 4 games, he has 12 carries and 0 yards. It is really, really, it's not promising. And you can't expect Bo to just be ripping the ball over the field. I know he had a couple picks, but the one was a fluke, and the other one was Sean Payton just piss poor play calling, and he admitted to that. The defense will play well. Riley Moss will get back. I think it's just a big get healthy week, right? Coming out of that bye, really prepare for the Colts. I think that's a huge one, right? Because we can possibly, separate ourselves even more in the wild card race from them. But yeah, I think it's really just figure out what you want to do with this run game moving forward, because you cannot win a playoff game with just a rookie quarterback throwing the ball over the yard. You got to really have a run game, especially in those late winter games. So figure out what we're doing going forward.
Yeah, it's a huge bye week for you guys. I would love to see you guys. Just obviously Sean Payton coaching is he's just a beast. He got his guy in Bo Nix, and you've really seen that offense turn around with Russell Wilson leaving and Bo Nix stepping in. So we'll see if they're able to continue that. And I'll say this, your guys' roster is not it's by no means this great roster. And I think that's a testament to coaching and Bo Nix really stepping up as your team's quarterback.
Think about it too, right? We have $40 million in dead cap. That's a huge hit, right? And I think I think even more than coaching and Bo Nix, it's a testament to George Payton and the job he's done hitting on some of these guys, right? Riley Moss, Devon Vele, just a lot of guys that we hit late rounds that people weren't looking at, that maybe, were late bloomers, or even Justin Chenard, right? He's a late bloomer. A lot of guys that, we've just hit in the later rounds over the years that are making huge impacts on low salary. So yeah, I just wanted to, point that out too. George Payton's doing a hell of a job finding gems in the later rounds.
Yeah, it's really important. The drafts and things like that on top of coaching are very important to find just to turn teams around. I know the Saints, Sean Payton left. Obviously, Dennis Allen comes in, terrible head coach. But on top of that, our drafts have sucked. And you just see the team obviously we have veterans who are solid, but then the drop off in skill when you get to the younger guys is really drastic, and it kills a team, and it also kills your future. So hopefully they're able to turn that around this offseason and turn this team back into what we once were with Sean Payton in those golden years, however many years ago. Anyways, that'll do it for this week. Saints Giants is going to be a fun game to go watch. Try to take some videos, maybe send it out on social media. But that'll do it for this episode. We will see you guys next week. As usual, check us out on Jenks Island, on all of our socials, and wherever you get your podcasts. We'll see you guys next week.